I wanted to talk about this word equity. We hear it a lot coming from the left and what it really means. Now, equity is the theory or concept that there must be equal outcomes. And without equal outcomes, then everything is racist, right? Systemic racism. Now, I would argue that equity is not even attainable within a family unit, let alone a nation. Let's talk about siblings. You can have two siblings born of the same parents, brought up in the same house, so same environmental, factors. These siblings also growing up within the same school system, same schools, so same education, and you will still have different outcomes because you have two individuals, right? They have different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses, different goals, different desires, different interests. And all of those things tie into our life choices. So you can't even provide equity there, right? So you've heard the concept or the phrase, the black sheep of the family. Well, where do you think that comes from, right? There's a stereotype that it is pretty prevalent within almost every American family that there is usually that one sibling that just didn't quite get it right, right? I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. So if equity isn't a realistic goal in terms of just our culture or civilly, what about biblically? And I'm going to show you why it is not a biblical concept. You guys have probably heard me talk about this before. I'm going to use the parable of the talents. It's in Matthew chapter 25. And I'm going to just read one little part for you in 25 verse 15. Basically, the landowner or the employer, he was dividing up some of his money among his employees while he was going on vacation. And he gave one person 5 bags of money. He gave a second person 2 bags of money. And he gave a third person 1 bag of money. And it says it was divided in proportion to their abilities. So he gave, according to their abilities, 5, 2, and 1. While he was gone, the guy who got 5 bags of money, he took that and he invested it, worked with it, and actually doubled it. So when the landowner or employer came back, that guy was able to hand over 10 bags of money. And the landowner was like, that's great. You're well done. You're faithful. And let's celebrate. Then the second guy who received initially 2 bags of money, he also worked and invested and turned those 2 bags into 4 bags. And he presented that to his employer and is like, look, I've doubled your money. And the employer's like, yes, well done. You are good and you are faithful. Let's celebrate. Now, the third guy who only received 1 bag, which again was all done in proportion to their abilities, he did nothing with his bag of money. He actually buried it in the sand or in the dirt, and because he said he was afraid that the landowner was, because he was cruel and he was this and he was that. And the landowner was like, you are a wicked, this is in verse 26, Matthew 25, 26. You are wicked and lazy. And he said, if you thought that I was all these horrible things, why couldn't you have at least taken that bag of money and put it in the bank? Because at least then I would have gotten interest, right? And so then when Jesus finishes this parable, then he sums it all up by saying this. This is, again, Matthew 25, but we are in verse, where are we? 29, verse 29. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now, I want to understand that. Now, that's Jesus's concept in the parable about why some are given more, some are given less, and then what they do with what they're given. Not a situation of equity, is it? Then also hold on, I wrote this down too, sorry. Matthew 26, verse 11, Jesus says, "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." Now, I bring this up because if Jesus was suggesting that there was a possibility of utopia or heaven on earth, right, then he would not have said, "You will always have the poor among you." This is a concept that is always going to exist. Now, equity would say you can't have any poor. In fact, you can't even really have any rich. Because equity never brings people up to the same level. It takes the people up here and lowers them all down to the same level. Everyone's poor, right? So it is not even within the concept of what Jesus describes. Now, there is more. I wrote this but didn't memorize it, so forgive me as I read this to you. We are all equal in God's sight, but equity is not a biblical principle or construct. We were never promised an easy life, John 16:33. We are to be thankful in all circumstances, that's 1 Thessalonians 5:18. And we are commanded to be content with what we have, Hebrews 13:5. Striving for equity, not equality, exposes a root of jealousy. That's in James 3, verses 14 and 16. It also exposes bitterness, which is in Hebrews 12:15, and even some self-pity, which is found in Psalm 73, verses 3 through 22. So I just want you guys, charity is absolutely a biblical construct. Equity is not. I think we should know the difference.